Hey, so tonight we're going to talk about Tudor England, and honestly, you're going to be real grateful for that mattress you're lying on by the time we're done here, because life in the 1500s and 1600s was wild. I'm talking about a time when kings had people executed for showing them unflattering portraits, when medicine involved bleeding you until you felt better, when witches were apparently everywhere and arsenic was basically a household staple. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. Alright, find that cozy spot, take a nice slow breath and just let your body sink into whatever you're lying on. We're heading back to Tudor England. So congratulations, you just woke up in 1530 something. The first thing you notice? The smell. Not bad, exactly, just different. There's wood smoke drifting through the gaps in the wall, mixing with the earthy scent of the rushes scattered across the floor. Someone's been spreading fresh ones recently. You can smell the sweet grass underneath your body. You're lying on what feels like a sack, because that's exactly what it is, a rough linen sack stuffed with straw, laid out on a woven rush mat. The straw crackles softly as you shift, trying to find a more comfortable position. Your body aches, everything aches actually. The cold has a way of settling into your bones here, making every joint feel stiff and reluctant. The linen of your undergarment, they call it a smock, is surprisingly clean against your skin. Someone changed it recently, maybe yesterday. You run your hand over the fabric. It's coarse but not unpleasant, practical, the kind of thing that can be scrubbed clean and hung to dry without falling apart. Above you, the ceiling is low and dark. Wooden beams disappear into shadows. Somewhere in the distance you can hear the soft murmur of voices, probably coming from the main part of the house where the family sleeps. You're in what they generously call the servants' quarters. Really? It's just an alcove off the main room, separated by a hanging piece of cloth. A church bell chimes somewhere across the fields, deep, resonant. The sound rolls over the countryside like a slow wave, reminding everyone that it's time for morning prayers. Soon, you'll hear the cockerels start their daily cacophony, but for now, there's just that single bell calling across the misty fields. You take a deep breath. Your lungs fill with air that tastes of herbs. Someone's been burning sage to ward off evil spirits. There's also something else, something green and alive, lavender maybe, or chamomile. The lady of the house believes in keeping the air sweet and clean. She hangs little sachets of dried flowers from the rafters, trying to keep illness at bay. Nice and easy. That's it. Your body starts to relax into the unfamiliar textures beneath you. Now here's the thing about Tudor England, and this is where it gets interesting. You wouldn't think you'd survive here, but honestly, people did. Lots of them. They had their ways of getting by, their little tricks for staying alive, but man, it was not easy. Let's start with the obvious question. What the hell are you going to eat? Well, if you're lucky enough to be working for a decent household, you're looking at bread and ale for breakfast. And when I say bread, I mean proper bread, not the white fluffy stuff you're used to. This is dense, chewy, made from a mix of wheat and rye. Sometimes they threw in some ground acorns if times were particularly tough, but it fills you up, keeps you going through a long day of work. The ale? Yeah, you drink ale. Even for breakfast. Even the kids drink ale. Because the water, you don't want to touch the water. It's basically a death sentence in most places. All kinds of nasty stuff floating around in there. But the ale, well, the brewing process kills most of the harmful bacteria. So ale it is. Morning, noon and night. If you're really fortunate, and I mean really fortunate, you might get some cheese with that bread, maybe a bit of butter if the cows have been cooperative, but mostly you're looking at bread, lots and lots of bread. You shift again, and the straw beneath you makes that soft, rustling sound. Getting more comfortable, your breathing naturally slows as you settle deeper into the story. For your main meal, and they call it dinner even though it happens around 11 in the morning, you're probably looking at pottage. Now pottage sounds fancy, but it's basically vegetable soup. Thick vegetable soup with whatever they could throw in, cabbage, onions, maybe some beans or peas if it's the right season, barley or oats to thicken it up. And if you're incredibly lucky, if someone's feeling generous or if it's a special occasion, you might find a scrap or two of bacon floating around in there. The thing is, this pottage, it's not terrible. When you're working hard all day, when you're genuinely hungry, it tastes pretty good, filling, warm, comforting even. It's just that you're going to be eating a lot of it, like a lot, every day, for months at a time. But here's where Tudor life gets properly interesting. The rich people, they're eating like kings, literally, because some of them are kings. Take Henry VIII. That guy, he's eating whatever he wants, whenever he wants it. Swan, peacock, porpoise. Yeah, porpoise. Apparently that counts as fish, so he can eat it on Fridays when meat is forbidden. The logic there is a bit questionable, but hey, when you're the king, you get to decide what counts as fish. Henry's meals are insane. We're talking about multiple courses, each with a dozen different dishes, roasted meats, elaborate pies, sugary desserts that are basically edible sculptures. The guy's consuming something like 5,000 calories a day, which, considering he's going to end up weighing about 400 pounds, makes sense. But here's the catch, and there's always a catch with Henry. The man's got a temper, like a seriously dangerous temper. A yawn escapes, and you feel your muscles starting to release some of their tension. See, Henry's got this problem. He wants a male heir, desperately, and he's willing to do pretty much anything to get one, including completely changing the religion of his entire country, which, as you can imagine, pisses off quite a few people. So, in 1534, Henry passes what they call the Treason Act, and this thing, it's basically a license to execute anyone who looks at him sideways. You deny that Henry's the head of the church? That's treason. You suggest he might be a bit of a tyrant? Also, treason. You say something that could be interpreted as wishing him harm? Definitely treason. And the punishment for treason? Well, let's just say Henry's not messing around. We're talking about beheading, or if you're really unlucky, hanging, drawing, and quartering, which is exactly as awful as it sounds. Thomas More found this out the hard way. Smart guy, well-respected lawyer, served as Henry's Lord Chancellor, but he refused to acknowledge Henry as head of the church, so in 1535, off with his head. Then there's John Fisher, Bishop of Rochester, another guy who wouldn't bend the knee to Henry's religious revolution. Same year, same fate, beheaded. And here's the really messed up part. Henry eventually has his own wife executed, Anne Boleyn, his second wife, the woman he literally changed the religion of England to marry. By 1536, he's decided he's done with her, so he has her charged with adultery and treason. The evidence? Pretty much non-existent, but that doesn't matter when you're Henry VIII. You can feel your shoulders dropping, releasing tension you didn't even know you were carrying. Now, here's where things get really wild, and this is the story that always gets me. Henry's got this advisor, Thomas Cromwell, started out as the son of a blacksmith, worked his way up to become one of the most powerful men in England. Not bad for a guy from basically nothing. But Cromwell makes one crucial mistake. He arranges a marriage for Henry with a German princess named Anne of Cleves. Now, the thing about marriage in the 1500s, especially royal marriages, is that you don't really know what you're getting into. There's no dating apps, no video calls, you've got painted portraits, and that's about it. So Cromwell looks at this nice portrait of Anne of Cleves, painted by Henry's court artist, and he thinks, perfect, Henry's gonna love her. Except when Anne arrives in England, Henry takes one look at her and decides he's not interested. Now, there are different theories about what went wrong. Some people say Anne looked nothing like her portrait. Others say Henry was having, shall we say, performance issues, and he needed someone to blame. Either way, Henry's not happy, and when Henry's not happy, people die. Poor Cromwell. One day he's the king's most trusted advisor. The next day he's being accused of treason for showing Henry a misleading portrait. In July of 1540, they drag him to the execution block, and according to some accounts, his enemies made sure the executioner was either drunk or incompetent because it apparently took more than one swing to get the job done. Your breathing is getting deeper now, more relaxed as you settle into this strange and dangerous world. The thing is, this isn't just Henry being randomly violent. Well, okay, it is that, but it's also Henry losing his mind. See, the guy's got some serious health problems. He loves jousting, but he's terrible at it, gets injured constantly. In 1536, he takes a particularly bad hit that leaves him with a leg wound that never heals properly, just sits there, festering and stinking and causing him constant pain. And the pain, it changes him, makes him paranoid, suspicious, angry all the time. Plus, he's putting on weight like crazy because he can't exercise anymore. By the end of his life, they say he weighs around 400 pounds and smells so bad from his infected leg that you can detect it from 3 rooms away. So you've got this massive, paranoid, constantly in pain king who's decided that anyone who doesn't agree with him is committing treason. And treason, as we've established, is a capital offence. But here's what's really interesting about Tudor England. It's not just Henry who's dangerous. The whole system is kind of set up to be unpredictable and deadly. Take medicine, for instance. You know what they use to treat basically everything? Bloodletting. The idea is that you've got too much bad blood, so they'll just drain some of it out of you, using leeches or knives or special cups that create suction. And somehow this is supposed to make you feel better. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Usually makes you worse. Sometimes kills you outright. But hey, it's the best they've got. Oh, and remember that arsenic I mentioned? Yeah, that's not just for killing rats. They also use it as medicine for skin conditions. Sometimes they take it orally, in small doses, supposedly. Queen Elizabeth apparently loves the stuff, uses it in her makeup to get that fashionable pale complexion. There's even a theory that she dies from arsenic poisoning after years of slathering it on her face. You feel yourself sinking deeper into the straw mattress, your body naturally finding a more comfortable position as the story continues. And then there are the just plain weird ways people die in Tudor England. Take Elizabeth Brown, for instance. She's working as a servant in some rich guy's house, and she's warming herself by the fire. Pretty normal, right? Except they've got this huge slab of bacon hanging in the chimney to smoke and dry, and wouldn't you know it, the rope breaks. The bacon falls, crushes Elizabeth. 4 days later, she's dead. Death by bacon. That's not something you expect to see on a death certificate. Or there's this other guy, John Townsend. He's working on fixing a clock in a church tower. Now, clocks are pretty new technology in Tudor England, so people are still figuring out how to repair them safely. John's carrying this heavy clock mechanism down from the tower when it slips out of his hands. Falls right onto the head of a kid named William Brett. Kid dies the next day. And these aren't isolated incidents. As more and more people move from the countryside into towns, as new technologies start appearing, there are all sorts of new and creative ways to accidentally die. But perhaps the most common way to die accidentally in Tudor England: poison. Specifically, accidentally eating rat poison instead of food. See, arsenic, which they call ratsbane, is everywhere. Every household's got some. You need it to deal with the rats, and trust me, there are a lot of rats. But the problem is, arsenic often comes in a white powder form that looks an awful lot like flour, or sugar, or any number of cooking ingredients. So, you've got housewives like Barbara Gilbert in Leicestershire, who's making dinner for her family. She reaches for what she thinks is flour, turns out to be ratsbane. She tests the food she's made, quality control, and ends up poisoning herself to death. Or there's this other woman who gets up in the middle of the night to get some beer for her sick husband. Beer, by the way, is often safer to drink than water, so this is actually a caring, responsible thing to do. Except in the dark, she grabs a jug of ratsbane mixed with water instead of beer. Her husband drinks it. Doesn't get better. A comfortable sigh escapes as you shift slightly, settling deeper into the medieval bedding, your muscles relaxing as the story flows around you. And sometimes ratsbane isn't even accidental. Sometimes people use it very much on purpose. Take the unfortunate Sir Thomas Overbury. He's a writer and courtier who ends up in the Tower of London on trumped-up charges. While he's in prison, someone, probably the Countess Frances Howard, starts adding arsenic to his food and drink. Overbury dies, and initially everyone thinks it's natural causes, until they examine his body and find it covered in black spots with his organs basically liquefied. Turns out the Countess was worried that Overbury knew some embarrassing secrets about her, so she decided to solve the problem permanently. A few of the jailers get executed for their role in the plot. The Countess? Well, it pays to be nobility. She gets off scot-free. This is the world you're living in, where a simple mistake in the kitchen can kill you, where the medicine is often more dangerous than the disease, where the king might have you beheaded because he doesn't like your face. But people adapt. They always do. You learn to be careful about what you eat. You learn to keep your opinions about the king to yourself. You learn to change your linen undergarments regularly and rub yourself down with a rough cloth each evening to stay clean. You learn to sleep when the church bells tell you to sleep and wake when they tell you to wake. And speaking of sleep, you've got some interesting challenges ahead of you there too. See, the Tudors believed that sleep is when all the bad spirits come out to play. So before you go to bed each night, you've got to take precautions. Turn your shoes upside down so spirits can't steal them and walk away. Avoid sleeping in moonlight because that's how you go mad. That's where the word lunacy comes from, actually. You also spend time each evening saying prayers and asking for protection from angels throughout the night. It's not just religious superstition, it's practical psychology, taking a few minutes to let go of the stresses of the day, to clear your mind and prepare for rest. And then there's the sleep itself. Tudors don't sleep for 8 straight hours like we do. They sleep in 2 phases. First, sleep for a few hours, then they wake up around midnight or 1 in the morning for what they call the quiet time. They'll read by moonlight or pray or have intimate time with their spouse. Then they go back to sleep for a few more hours until dawn. The church bells ring every hour, so you get used to hearing them throughout the night. It becomes part of the rhythm of your life, comforting even. Your breathing naturally slows, becoming deeper and more rhythmic as you imagine settling into that strange medieval rhythm of sleeping and waking. You know what's really wild about Tudor England, though? It's not the violence or the weird medicine or the accidental poisonings. It's how quickly everything can change. One day, you're Thomas Cromwell, the most powerful man in England aside from the king himself. The next day, you're walking to the execution block because you showed Henry a portrait he didn't like. One day, you're a respected bishop, confident in your faith and your position. The next day, you're being burned at the stake because the new queen has decided that Protestants are enemies of the state. One day you're Anne Boleyn, Queen of England, the woman the king moved heaven and earth to marry. The next day you're in the Tower, accused of adultery and treason, waiting for the executioner's sword. That's the thing about Tudor England. It's unpredictable, dangerous, but also kind of fascinating. Because in all this chaos, in all this uncertainty, people still manage to live. They fall in love. They have children. They create art and music and literature. They find ways to be happy. They wake up each morning in their straw-filled sacks. They eat their bread and pottage. They do their work and they go to sleep grateful for another day of survival. And right now, settling deeper into your own comfortable bed, feeling the gentle weight of warm blankets, listening to the soft rhythm of your own breathing, you can appreciate just how far we've come. Your eyelids are starting to feel pleasantly heavy as you sink deeper into the soft embrace of your mattress, so much more comfortable than those rough rush mats and straw-filled sacks. That's it, nice and easy, as the strange and dangerous world of Tudor England continues to unfold around you. And in that moment of quiet comfort, the church bells chime once across the misty fields, calling the faithful to their morning prayers while you settle deeper still into this journey through history. The bells fade into the morning mist and you're left with the gentle sounds of a household waking up. Somewhere nearby, someone's building up the fire. You can hear the soft scraping of wood against stone, the whisper of breath encouraging flames to catch. Your stomach rumbles quietly. Time for breakfast, which means time to find out exactly what kind of household you've ended up in, because the food you get, the treatment you receive, the chances you have of surviving another day, all of that depends entirely on who owns this place and what kind of mood they're in. Let's hope you haven't ended up working for someone like Richard Topcliffe. Now there's a name that would make any Tudor servant's blood run cold. They call him the Priest Hunter, and if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about this guy, let me fill in the details. See, after Henry dies, his daughter Mary takes the throne, and Mary's got some very strong opinions about religion. Specifically, she thinks her father made a terrible mistake when he broke away from the Catholic Church, so she decides to fix things by burning Protestants alive. Yeah, that's her solution. Convert back to Catholicism or burn. Mary's reign only lasts 5 years, from 1553 to 1558, but in that time she manages to execute somewhere between 280 to over 600 Protestants, most of them burned at the stake, which is exactly as horrible as it sounds. The most famous case is the Oxford Martyrs. 3 Protestant bishops, Hugh Latimer, Nicholas Ridley and Thomas Cranmer, high-profile guys, well-respected, important in the Protestant Church. Mary has them charged with heresy and burned at the stake in Oxford in 1555. The idea is to send a message, to let every Protestant in England know that their beliefs won't be tolerated anymore, that England is going back to being Catholic, whether they like it or not. You pull the rough blanket closer around your shoulders, feeling grateful for its warmth as the story continues. But then Mary dies, probably from uterine cancer, though nobody's really sure, and her half-sister Elizabeth takes the throne. And Elizabeth, she's Protestant, so now it's the Catholics' turn to be persecuted. Enter Richard Topcliffe, the priest hunter. This guy makes Henry VIII look reasonable. Topcliffe's job is to hunt down Catholic priests and anyone else who might be secretly practicing Catholicism, and he's very, very good at his job, also very enthusiastic about it. Topcliffe has his own special torture technique. He calls it Topcliffe's Persuasion. Catchy name, right? What he does is suspend prisoners from the ceiling by their wrists, then drop them repeatedly until they agree to talk, over and over, until something breaks, either their spirit or their bones. And once he gets a confession out of someone, he doesn't just send them to trial and walk away. Oh no, Topcliffe personally attends every trial to make sure the prisoner gets condemned to death. Then he shows up for the execution to watch them die. For those convicted of treason, which includes being a Catholic priest, the punishment is particularly nasty. They don't just hang you until you're dead. They hang you just until you're unconscious, then cut you down while you're still alive. Then they disembowel you while you're awake. Then they cut you into quarters. And Topcliffe watches it all. Enjoys it, apparently. He's also got this charming habit of humiliating prisoners before their executions, makes them kneel before him and kiss his hand, taunts them, insults them, sometimes in public, just to add an extra layer of degradation to their final hours. The guy's got a whole network of spies reporting on suspected Catholics. He uses blackmail, threats, whatever underhanded tactics he can think of to get what he wants. One of his most famous victims is Edmund Campion, a Jesuit priest who's tortured and executed in 1581. You shift position slightly, feeling the straw crackle beneath you as your muscles continue to relax. Now here's what's really messed up about all this religious persecution. It's not even really about religion half the time. It's about politics and power and fear. See, when Mary's burning Protestants, she's not just worried about their souls, she's worried about rebellion, about people who might challenge her authority. Same thing when Elizabeth's persecuting Catholics. It's not just about religious doctrine, it's about loyalty to the state. But the common people, the servants and farmers and craftsmen, they're caught in the middle. One day you're supposed to be Catholic, the next day you're supposed to be Protestant, and if you guess wrong, you might end up in front of Richard Topcliffe. So you learn to keep your mouth shut about religion. You learn to go to whatever church the current monarch tells you to go to. You learn to nod and smile and agree with whatever the local authorities are saying this week about God and salvation. Because the alternative is torture and death. But religion isn't the only thing you need to worry about in Tudor England. There's also the witches. Oh yeah, witches are apparently everywhere in Tudor England, and everyone's terrified of them. Now, when I say witches, I don't mean actual witches. I mean women, and it's almost always women who get accused of practicing witchcraft, usually because something bad happened and somebody needed someone to blame. The witch trials in Tudor England are driven by fear and superstition and a healthy dose of mass hysteria, and some of the accusations are absolutely bonkers. Take the Witches of Warboys trial in 1593. 4 women from this little village called Warboys get accused of practicing witchcraft. And what are they accused of exactly? Flying on broomsticks, casting spells on livestock, turning into animals. The main accusers are 2 young girls, Jane Willis and Susan Lathrop, who claim they've been bewitched. They say the witches gave them hallucinations and seizures. They say the witches can transform into dogs and cats. And despite the fact that these accusations are completely insane, the women are found guilty and sentenced to death. A soft yawn escapes as you settle more comfortably into the straw-filled bedding. Or take the North Berwick witch trials up in Scotland. This one's even crazier. A group of women get accused of plotting to kill King James VI of Scotland through witchcraft, and James himself gets personally involved in the investigation and prosecution. More than 70 people get executed in that one. 70 people. For supposedly practicing witchcraft. Now you might be wondering, why is everyone so afraid of witches? What's driving this hysteria? Well, part of it is that Tudor England is going through some serious social and economic upheaval. The monasteries are being shut down. Common land that people used to farm is being turned into private property for grazing sheep. People are moving from the countryside to cities. Traditional ways of life are disappearing. And when people's lives are turned upside down, when they're struggling to make a living, when everything seems uncertain and scary, they need someone to blame. And witches make convenient scapegoats. Can't figure out why your cow died? Must be witches. Crops failed this year? Witches. Your baby got sick? Definitely witches. It's easier than admitting that sometimes bad things just happen. That life is hard and unpredictable and nobody's really in control. But here's the thing about surviving in Tudor England. You can't just worry about kings and religious persecution and witch trials. You also have to deal with the everyday stuff, the mundane challenges that can kill you just as dead as a treason charge, like food. We talked about pottage and bread, but let's get into the details of what you're actually eating day after day. If you're working as a servant in a decent household, your typical day goes something like this. You wake up at dawn, no alarm clocks, just the natural rhythm of light and darkness. You eat some bread and ale for breakfast, maybe cheese if you're lucky. Then you work. Hard physical labour. Hauling water, chopping wood, tending animals, working in the fields. By midday, you're starving. So you get your main meal, dinner they call it, even though it's 11 in the morning. This is where the pottage comes in. Big bowl of thick vegetable soup, cabbage, onions, maybe some beans or peas if it's the right season, barley or oats to bulk it up. And if it's been a good week, if the household's feeling generous, you might find some scraps of bacon or salted beef floating around in there. Your breathing naturally slows and deepens as you imagine the warmth of that simple meal. The thing is, this pottage isn't terrible. When you're genuinely hungry, when you've been working hard all morning, it tastes pretty good. Filling, warm, satisfying even, but it's also incredibly repetitive. You're eating basically the same thing every day, with slight variations depending on what vegetables are in season, and whether anyone's managed to catch some fish or trap a rabbit. If you're really fortunate, if you're working for a prosperous household, you might get some variety. Maybe some apples or pears when they're in season, perhaps some nuts in the autumn, occasionally some fresh fish if someone's been to market, but mostly it's bread and pottage, day after day, week after week. Now, if you're rich, if you're nobility or successful merchants, you're eating like royalty, literally multiple courses with dozens of different dishes, roasted meats, elaborate pies, sugary desserts, imported spices from halfway around the world, wine from France, exotic fruits that cost more than most people make in a month. But here's the catch. Even if you're rich, even if you can afford the finest foods, you're still at risk because Tudor food preparation is basically a game of Russian roulette. Remember that arsenic we talked about? It's not just used for killing rats and treating skin conditions. It's also accidentally mixed into food on a regular basis because it looks like flour or sugar or any number of cooking ingredients. And it's not just arsenic you need to worry about. Food spoilage is a constant problem. No refrigeration, remember? So meat and fish go bad quickly, and sometimes people eat it anyway because they can't afford to waste food. Plus, the cooking methods are pretty primitive. Everything's done over an open fire. It's easy to undercook meat, which can make you sick, or overcook it, which makes it tough and unappetizing, but at least won't kill you. You feel your muscles loosening, tension melting away as you sink deeper into the rustic bedding. And then there's the hygiene situation, which is actually better than you might expect, but still pretty challenging by modern standards. Contrary to popular belief, Tudors do care about being clean. They just go about it differently than we do. Most people don't take baths regularly, partly because it's a lot of work to heat that much water, and partly because they believe bathing too often might be unhealthy. But they do change their linen undergarments frequently. Remember that smock I mentioned? That's your first line of defense against dirt and body odor. You've got 2 or 3 of them and you rotate them regularly. One to wear, one in the wash, and maybe a good one for Sundays. You also do what they call a rub down each evening. Take a rough linen cloth and scrub yourself all over. The linen absorbs sweat and dirt, and the rough texture helps remove dead skin. It's surprisingly effective. The wealthy can afford to be even cleaner. They've got perfumed soaps, scented waters, even some primitive toothpaste made from herbs and spices. Queen Elizabeth reportedly washes her hands in perfume. Henry VIII is considered a hygiene freak by the standards of his time. But for everyone else, cleanliness is a constant challenge. You're working hard, sweating, getting dirty. Your clothes get filthy and take time to clean properly. You're living in close quarters with other people and animals. And speaking of animals, they're everywhere. Chickens wandering around the house, pigs in the yard, horses and oxen for heavy work, dogs and cats to control vermin. Which brings us to another charming aspect of Tudor life, the smells. We've got wood smoke, which is actually pleasant. The smell of cooking food, which can be enticing when you're hungry. Fresh herbs hanging from the rafters, maybe some lavender or chamomile. But we've also got animal smells, human body odour, the contents of chamber pots, rotting food scraps, the general funk of people living in close quarters without modern sanitation. In towns and cities, it's even worse. People are literally throwing their waste into the streets. Butchers are slaughtering animals and letting the blood run into gutters. Tanners are processing leather using urine and animal feces. The smell of a Tudor city is basically indescribable, overwhelming, something you either get used to or it drives you crazy. A comfortable sigh escapes as you adjust your position, settling deeper into the medieval world. And yet people adapt, they always do. You learn to breathe through your mouth when walking past the worst areas. You learn to appreciate the sweet smell of fresh herbs and flowers. You learn to associate certain smells with home and comfort and safety. You learn to find pleasure in simple things. The smell of bread baking, the sound of church bells, the warmth of a fire on a cold morning, the taste of ale after a long day of work. Because that's what survival looks like in Tudor England. Not grand gestures or heroic acts, just getting through each day, finding small moments of comfort and joy in a world that's often harsh and unpredictable. And right now, lying in your own comfortable bed, you can appreciate just how much easier your life is. You don't have to worry about accidentally eating rat poison. You don't have to worry about being executed for your religious beliefs. You don't have to work from dawn to dusk just to earn enough food to survive another day. You can just lie there, warm and safe, letting your body relax completely as the story of Tudor England continues to unfold around you. Your muscles are completely loose now, you're breathing slow and steady. The rough straw beneath you seems almost comfortable, the woolen blanket warm against your skin. Somewhere in the distance, another church bell chimes, marking the passage of time in this strange and fascinating world. But even as you settle deeper into this historical journey, as your body finds that perfect position of complete relaxation, there's still so much more to discover about life in Tudor England. The daily struggles and small victories, the ways people found to be happy despite everything. The human connections that made survival not just possible, but meaningful. Nice and easy, That's it, as you sink deeper into the comfort of your modern bed, so grateful for its softness while the Tudor world continues around you and the gentle rhythm of your breathing matches the steady chiming of those distant church bells across the misty English countryside. The bells grow quieter as the morning progresses, and you're starting to understand the rhythm of this place. Work begins early, food is simple but filling, and everyone, from the lowest servant to the highest lord, lives with the constant awareness that life can change dramatically without warning. You stretch slightly, feeling the straw shift beneath you, and realise that despite everything we've talked about, the executions, the poisonings, the religious persecution, people in Tudor England still manage to find ways to enjoy themselves. They still fall in love, they still celebrate, they still find reasons to laugh. Take their feasts, for instance. When Tudors throw a party, they really throw a party. If you're working in a wealthy household during feast time, you're in for something spectacular. We're talking about multiple courses, each with a dozen different dishes brought out all at once. The diners don't eat everything. They pick and choose what they want, and the rest gets passed down to the servants. Which means you, as a servant, might actually eat better during feast times than the rest of the year. Leftover roasted meats, fancy pastries, maybe even some of those imported fruits or expensive spices. The Field of Cloth of Gold in 1520 is a perfect example of Tudor excess. Henry VIII decides to have a summit meeting with the French king, Francis I, and they don't just meet in some castle or palace, they create an entire temporary city with golden tents, elaborate pavilions, fountains flowing with wine. The food at this thing is absolutely insane. Gilded swans and peacocks, candied orange peels, pears in wine, fruit jellies, something called hippocras, which is basically spiced wine, gingerbread shaped like castles and animals, and get this, they serve porpoise and dolphin. Because apparently if it lives in water, it counts as fish, so you can eat it on religious fasting days. Your breathing continues to slow and deepen as you imagine the spectacle of such a feast. But even for ordinary people, even for servants and farmers and craftsmen, there are still celebrations, harvest festivals, wedding feasts, religious holidays, and the thing about Tudor celebrations is that they're communal. Everyone participates. The whole household, from the lord and lady down to the scullery maids, joins in the festivities. Social hierarchies don't disappear, but they become more relaxed. During these celebrations, you might hear music that's actually pretty sophisticated, lutes and virginals and recorders, complex harmonies, songs that tell stories of love and adventure and heroism. You might see dancing, not just simple folk dances, but elaborate courtly dances with intricate steps and beautiful costumes. Even servants often know the basic steps because dance is part of social education. And you might taste foods that are normally beyond your reach. Marzipan sculptures shaped like animals and castles. Subtleties, they call them. Edible art pieces made from almonds and sugar. Simnel cakes with 13 ingredients representing Jesus and the apostles. Syllabub, a kind of creamy dessert that's sweet and rich and absolutely delicious. But here's what's really interesting about Tudor feast culture. It's not just about showing off wealth, it's about creating bonds, building loyalty, demonstrating that the household is prosperous and well managed. When a lord throws a good feast, he's telling his servants and tenants and neighbours that he's successful, that he can provide for them, that he's worthy of their allegiance. And when servants and common people participate in these feasts, they're demonstrating their place in the social order. It's a whole complex system of mutual obligation and respect. The lord provides food and protection and employment. The servants provide labour and loyalty and support. A gentle yawn escapes as you shift position, getting even more comfortable in the rough bedding. Now, let's talk about what happens when you're not working or feasting, because Tudors do have leisure time, even servants. Sunday afternoons, after church services, are often free. You might play games. Bowling is popular, though it's played on grass, not in alleys. There's also something called skittles, which is kind of like bowling but with wooden pins. Card games are becoming popular too, though you have to be careful about gambling, because that can get you in trouble with the authorities. A friendly game for small stakes is usually okay. High-stakes gambling that might lead to debt and social problems is frowned upon. If you're lucky enough to live near a town, you might attend bear baiting or cockfighting. These are brutal sports by our standards, but they're considered normal entertainment in Tudor England. People gather around to watch animals fight, place bets on the outcome, cheer for their favourites. There are also mystery plays, religious dramas performed by travelling actors. These tell stories from the Bible or the lives of saints. They're educational and entertaining at the same time. And if you're really fortunate, you might see a performance by professional actors. Theatre is just starting to become a serious art form in Tudor England. By the time Elizabeth is on the throne, playwrights like Christopher Marlowe and eventually William Shakespeare are creating works that will be remembered for centuries. But most of your entertainment is simpler: storytelling around the fire in the evening, singing while you work, gossip and conversation with your fellow servants. And speaking of conversation, let's talk about what people actually discuss when they're not working. Well, the weather, obviously. Weather affects everything in Tudor England. A bad harvest means famine. Too much rain means the roads become impassable. A harsh winter means higher prices for food and fuel. People also talk about their lords and masters, who's in favour at court, who's been promoted or demoted, who's gotten married or had children or died. They discuss local news, crimes and punishments, marriages and births and deaths, strange events or unusual weather patterns, and they share gossip about their neighbours, who's been seen with whom, who's having financial troubles, who's been behaving suspiciously. What they don't discuss much, at least not openly, is politics or religion. Those topics are too dangerous. You never know who might be listening, who might report your words to the authorities. Remember, we're living in a world where thought crimes are real, where expressing the wrong opinion about the king or the church can get you executed, so people learn to keep their political and religious thoughts to themselves. Your shoulders drop as tension continues to melt away, your body sinking deeper into the straw-filled mattress. But here's something that might surprise you about Tudor England. Despite all the dangers we've talked about, despite the executions and persecutions and accidental poisonings, many people actually live relatively long lives if you make it past childhood, and that's a big if. You have a decent chance of reaching your 50s or 60s. Some people live into their 70s or even 80s. The key is avoiding the big killers: war, plague, famine, accidents, and political persecution. If you can steer clear of those, if you're careful about what you eat and drink, if you stay out of trouble with the authorities, you can have a reasonably long life. And people do plan for the future. They save money when they can. They arrange marriages for their children. They learn trades and skills that will serve them throughout their lives. Speaking of trades, let's talk about what kind of work you might be doing in Tudor England. If you're a woman, your options are somewhat limited. You might work as a servant in a household, kitchen maid, chambermaid, laundry maid. You might work in the fields during harvest time. You might help in a shop or tavern owned by your husband or family. Some women become skilled craftswomen, embroiderers, bakers, brewers. A few even run their own businesses, though this is unusual and requires special permission. If you're a man, you have more options. You might be a farm labourer, working the fields and tending animals. You might learn a craft: carpentry, blacksmithing, masonry, tailoring. Or you might work in one of the new industries that are developing as England becomes more urbanised. There are opportunities in cloth making, brewing, shipping and trade. The thing about Tudor work is that it's seasonal. Agricultural work follows the rhythm of planting, growing and harvesting. Even craft work often depends on agricultural cycles, because that's when people have money to spend on non-essential goods. So you learn to adapt to these rhythms. You work intensively during busy seasons and have more leisure time during slow periods. You save money and food during good times to carry you through lean periods. A comfortable sigh escapes as you adjust your position, settling even deeper into the medieval bedding. Now let's talk about something that affects everyone in Tudor England, regardless of their social status or occupation: the legal system. Tudor law is, well, it's complicated and often pretty harsh. For minor crimes, theft of small amounts, public drunkenness, petty assault, you might face punishment in the stocks. This means being locked in a wooden frame in the town square while people throw rotten vegetables at you. Humiliating, but not permanently damaging. For more serious crimes, major theft, fraud, assault with a weapon, you're looking at whipping, branding, or having body parts cut off. Thieves might lose a hand. People who spread false information might have their ears cut off. And for the most serious crimes, murder, rape, treason, heresy, the punishment is death. Usually by hanging, though nobles sometimes get the privilege of beheading, which is considered more dignified and less painful. The thing about Tudor justice is that it's often arbitrary. Your punishment depends not just on what you did, but on who you are, who you know, and what kind of mood the judge is in. If you're a servant accused of stealing from your master, you're probably doomed. The word of a gentleman carries more weight than the word of a servant, so unless you have very strong evidence in your favour, you're likely to be convicted. But if you're accused of the same crime by someone of equal or lower social status, you might have a chance, especially if you can find witnesses to testify on your behalf, or if you have a good reputation in the community. The key to surviving the Tudor legal system is staying out of it entirely. Don't steal, obviously. Don't get into fights. Don't spread gossip that might be considered seditious. Keep your nose clean and hope that nobody decides to make false accusations against you. But even if you follow all the rules, even if you're a model citizen, you're still vulnerable, because Tudor England is a place where powerful people can destroy you on a whim. Remember Thomas Cromwell? He followed all the rules. He served his king faithfully. He accumulated wealth and power through legal means. And then one day, Henry decided he didn't like him anymore, and that was the end of Thomas Cromwell. Your breathing becomes even more relaxed as you contemplate the precarious nature of Tudor life. This uncertainty, this constant awareness that your fate is largely out of your control, affects how people think about life and death. Tudors are much more accepting of death than we are. They see it as a natural part of life, something that can happen at any time to anyone. They don't expect to live to old age. They don't assume that medical treatment will save them from serious illness. This might sound depressing, but it actually creates a different kind of wisdom. People focus on the present moment. They appreciate simple pleasures. They value relationships and community connections. They also develop a kind of practical spirituality. Whether they're Catholic or Protestant, most Tudors believe that God is actively involved in their daily lives. They pray for protection, for guidance, for basic needs like food and shelter. This belief system helps them cope with uncertainty. When bad things happen, when crops fail, or children die, or wars break out, they don't see it as random bad luck. They see it as part of God's plan, something that has meaning even if they can't understand it. And when good things happen, when they find love or achieve success or simply survive another day, they're genuinely grateful. They don't take these things for granted. Now, let's talk about love and marriage in Tudor England, because despite everything we've discussed, people still fall in love. They still want companionship and intimacy and family, but Tudor marriage is very different from modern marriage. It's primarily an economic arrangement. Families negotiate marriages to improve their social status, increase their wealth, or form political alliances. Love is considered a nice bonus, but it's not essential. The expectation is that couples will learn to care for each other over time through shared experiences and mutual support. That said, some people do marry for love, especially among the lower classes, where there's less money and property at stake. A servant or craftsman might choose his own wife as long as his master or employer approves. And even in arranged marriages, many couples do develop genuine affection for each other. They learn to appreciate each other's qualities. They work together to build a household and raise children. They support each other through difficult times. Your muscles continue to loosen as you imagine the warmth and comfort of human connection in this harsh world. Tudor marriages also have practical advantages that we might not immediately recognise. When two people marry, they're not just joining their lives, they're joining their resources and skills. A husband brings his trade skills, his legal status, his connections in the community. A wife brings her domestic skills, her family connections, and often a dowry of money or property. Together, they can achieve things that neither could accomplish alone. They can afford better housing, save more money, weather economic downturns, and provide for their children. Children, of course, are both a blessing and a responsibility in Tudor England. They represent the future of the family, the continuation of the bloodline, and eventually a source of support in old age. But raising children is also expensive and risky. Child mortality rates are high. Many children don't survive to adulthood, and even healthy children require food, clothing, and care that can strain a family's resources. Most Tudor families have several children, partly because they expect some of them to die young, and partly because children become productive members of the household relatively early. By age 7 or 8, children are helping with household chores. By their early teens, they're contributing significantly to the family income. And here's something interesting about Tudor childhood. Children aren't considered miniature adults exactly, but they're not protected from adult realities the way modern children are. They see death regularly. They're present when adults discuss serious matters. They witness the harsh realities of Tudor justice. They understand that life is uncertain and often unfair. This might seem harsh by our standards, but it also prepares them for adult life. They develop resilience and practical skills. They learn to adapt to changing circumstances. They understand their place in the social order and what's expected of them. A peaceful yawn passes through you as your body settles even more deeply into the rough comfort of the Tudor bedding. Speaking of children, let's talk about education in Tudor England, because contrary to popular belief, literacy rates are actually increasing during this period. Not everyone learns to read and write, of course, but more people than you might expect have at least basic literacy skills. Especially in towns and cities, where being able to read contracts and keep accounts is increasingly important for business. The wealthy hire private tutors for their children. Boys often go away to school to study Latin, rhetoric, mathematics, and classical literature. Girls usually receive education at home, focusing on domestic skills, basic literacy, and religious instruction. But even servant children sometimes learn to read and write. Progressive employers recognize that literate servants are more valuable and trustworthy. They can take messages, keep simple records, and handle more complex tasks. The growth of literacy is driven partly by religious changes. Both Catholics and Protestants want people to be able to read religious texts. They want people to understand sermons and participate more fully in worship. It's also driven by economic changes. As trade becomes more complex, as people move to cities and take up specialized crafts, literacy becomes more valuable. And it's driven by technological changes. Printing presses are making books more affordable and available. People can own copies of the Bible, prayer books, and other religious texts. They can read pamphlets about current events, instructional manuals for crafts and trades, and even early forms of entertainment literature. This increase in literacy has some interesting effects on Tudor society. It makes information spread faster. It allows for more complex forms of political and religious debate. It creates new opportunities for social mobility, but it also makes the authorities nervous. Literate people can read seditious pamphlets. They can share dangerous ideas. They're harder to control through simple propaganda and misinformation. So the government tries to control what gets printed and distributed. They license printing presses. They censor books and pamphlets. They punish people who produce or distribute unauthorized materials. But information still spreads. Ideas still circulate. People still find ways to share knowledge and opinions, even when it's risky to do so. Your breathing has become completely natural and relaxed, your body finding that perfect state of comfortable rest. As the morning light grows stronger outside your small window, you're beginning to understand something important about Tudor England. Despite all the dangers, despite all the hardships, despite the constant uncertainty, this is a society where people create meaning and find joy in their lives. They build communities, they develop skills and take pride in their work. They form deep friendships and lasting marriages. They raise children and pass on their knowledge and values. They celebrate harvest festivals and religious holidays. They tell stories and sing songs. They care for each other during illness and support each other through difficult times. They're not just surviving, they're living, creating culture and art and music, developing new technologies and exploring new ideas, building the foundations for the world that will come after them. And right now, lying in your comfortable modern bed, feeling the gentle weight of soft blankets, listening to the steady rhythm of your own breathing, you can appreciate both how far we've come and how much we share with these people from 500 years ago. The same basic human needs, the same desire for safety and comfort and connection, the same ability to adapt and endure and find happiness even in difficult circumstances. Getting more comfortable now, that's better, as your body settles deeper into the warmth and softness while the Tudor world continues around you, and somewhere in the distance those church bells chime again, marking another hour in this fascinating and dangerous time. And your muscles relax completely as the gentle rhythm of medieval life flows through the story. The bells fade into the everyday sounds of Tudor life, and you're starting to feel like you belong in this world. The rough textures are becoming familiar. The simple rhythms of work and rest are making sense. Your body has adapted to the straw mattress, finding the comfortable spots, learning to shift and settle in ways that ease the aches. But there's still so much more to discover about what it really means to live in Tudor England, the small details that make the difference between surviving and thriving, the little tricks people use to stay healthy, stay safe, stay sane. Let's talk about what you actually do all day. Because work in Tudor England isn't just about earning money, it's about staying alive. If you're working as a servant in a household, your day starts before dawn. No sleeping in, no lying around in bed. You're up when the first church bell rings, getting the fires started, preparing for the day ahead. Your first job is usually hauling water, and this isn't as simple as turning on a tap. You're walking to the well or the stream, lowering a heavy bucket, pulling it back up full of water, then carrying it back to the house. Multiple trips. Your arms and shoulders ache by the time you're done. But water is essential for everything. Cooking, cleaning, washing clothes, basic hygiene. So you haul water, no matter how tired you are, no matter how much your back hurts. Then there's the fire. Keeping it going is a constant responsibility. You're banking coals at night to preserve heat. You're blowing on embers in the morning to get flames started. You're feeding wood throughout the day to maintain the right temperature for cooking. Let the fire die and you're in serious trouble. No heat for cooking, no warmth for the household, no hot water for cleaning. You'll spend hours trying to restart it, assuming you can find someone willing to share coals from their fire. A gentle yawn escapes as you settle deeper into the straw, your muscles continuing to relax. If you're working in the kitchen, your responsibilities are even more complex. You're not just cooking, you're managing food storage, planning meals, dealing with spoilage, making sure nothing gets wasted. Remember, there's no refrigeration, so you're constantly making decisions about what to cook first, what can wait, what needs to be preserved or thrown away. A piece of meat that's been sitting too long might still be edible if you cook it thoroughly, but it might also kill someone if you guess wrong. You're also dealing with seasonal variations in food availability. Spring is often the hardest time because last year's preserved foods are running low and this year's crops haven't matured yet. You learn to stretch ingredients to make a little bit of meat, feed a lot of people, to create filling meals from whatever's available. And you're constantly dealing with vermin. Rats and mice are everywhere, trying to get into the grain stores, the preserved meats, anything edible. You set traps, you use cats to control them, you store food in containers they can't chew through, but they're persistent and they carry disease, so it's an ongoing battle. The worst part about working in a Tudor kitchen? The heat, especially in summer. You're standing over an open fire for hours at a time, stirring pots, turning meat on spits, kneading bread. The temperature in the kitchen can become unbearable, but you can't just stop working because you're uncomfortable. Meals have to be ready on time. Food has to be cooked properly. The household depends on you to keep everyone fed. Your breathing naturally slows as you imagine the rhythm of that demanding work. Now, if you're working in the fields, your challenges are different but equally demanding. Agricultural work in Tudor England is backbreaking. You're working with hand tools, hoes, scythes, sickles. No machinery to make the job easier, just human muscle power applied to stubborn soil and tough plants. Ploughing is done with oxen or horses if you're lucky, by hand if you're not. You're walking behind the animals, guiding the plough, breaking up soil that's been packed down all winter. Your legs ache from the uneven ground. Your hands are raw from gripping the plough handles. Planting means bending over for hours, dropping seeds into furrows, covering them with soil. Your back screams in protest. Your knees hurt from constantly kneeling and standing. Harvesting is the most demanding of all. You're working against time, trying to get crops in before bad weather ruins them. Long days under the hot sun, cutting grain with hand tools, gathering it into bundles, loading it onto carts, and this work is seasonal, which means feast or famine. During planting and harvest, you work from sunrise to sunset, 7 days a week. During winter, there might be very little work available, which means very little income. You learn to save money during busy periods to carry you through slow times. You learn to take on different kinds of work, maybe craft work or repair jobs, when agricultural work isn't available. But here's something interesting about Tudor work culture. Despite how hard the work is, despite the long hours and physical demands, there's often a strong sense of community among workers. People help each other. During harvest time, neighbours often work together, moving from farm to farm to get everyone's crops in. It's faster and more efficient, but it's also social. There's singing and joking and storytelling to make the work more bearable. There are traditional breaks during the workday. The beaver or noonshine we talked about earlier, bread and cheese eaten in the fields at midday, but also shorter breaks for drinks of ale or cider, moments to rest and chat with fellow workers. And there are traditional rewards for hard work, the harvest feast, where the lord or employer provides a special meal for everyone who helped bring in the crops. These aren't just about food, they're celebrations, acknowledgements that the work was difficult and that everyone contributed. You feel your shoulders dropping, tension melting away as you imagine the satisfaction of hard work completed. Speaking of food, let's get into the really specific details of what you're eating day by day, because food in Tudor England is both simpler and more complex than you might expect. Take bread, for instance. We've talked about how important it is, how everyone eats it at every meal, but the actual bread varies dramatically depending on your social status and what's available. If you're poor, you're eating what they call carter's bread. This is made from a mixture of rye and wheat and sometimes other grains like barley or oats. When times are really tough, they might throw in some ground acorns or even sawdust to stretch the flour. This bread is dark, dense, and tough. It doesn't taste bad exactly, but it's nothing like modern bread. It's chewy, substantial, filling, the kind of food that sits heavy in your stomach and gives you energy for hard physical work. If you're middle class, a successful craftsman or prosperous farmer, you eat yeoman's bread made from wholemeal flour. This is lighter and more pleasant than carter's bread, but still hearty and substantial. And if you're wealthy, you eat manchet, white bread made from the finest wheat flour. This is soft, light, almost cake-like compared to what poor people eat. It's considered a luxury item, a sign of status and wealth. But here's what's interesting. Even poor people sometimes get to eat fancy bread. During feast times, during celebrations, employers often provide better food for their workers. So you might eat carter's bread most of the year, but manchet at Christmas or during harvest festivals. The same principle applies to other foods. Your regular diet might be simple pottage and coarse bread, but occasionally you get to taste roasted meat, sweet pastries, imported spices. These become special memories, things you look forward to and appreciate deeply. A comfortable sigh passes through you as you adjust positions slightly, settling even deeper. Now, let's talk about ale, since you're drinking it constantly. Tudor ale is very different from modern beer. It's brewed without hops, so it doesn't have that bitter flavour we associate with beer today. Instead, it's sweetish, mildly alcoholic, and often flavoured with herbs. Different households brew ale differently. Some use honey to sweeten it. Others add herbs like rosemary or sage. The strength varies too. Sometimes it's barely alcoholic, more like flavoured water. Other times it's strong enough to make you tipsy if you drink too much. The quality of ale also varies seasonally. Fresh ale is best, but it doesn't keep long without refrigeration, so by the end of winter you might be drinking ale that's a bit sour or funky, not pleasant but still safer than water. And here's something that might surprise you. Children drink ale too, not because Tudors want to get their kids drunk, but because it's genuinely safer than water in many places. They usually give children weak ale, sometimes called small ale, that has very little alcohol content. You also drink ale at specific times and for specific purposes. Ale with breakfast to start the day, ale with dinner to wash down your food, ale in the evening to relax after work, ale when you're sick because it's considered more nourishing than water. If you're fortunate enough to work for a wealthy household, you might occasionally taste wine. This is imported from France or Spain. Expensive and considered a luxury. Wine is usually reserved for special occasions or important guests. But for most people, most of the time, ale is the drink of choice. You get used to the taste, come to appreciate the subtle differences between different batches, learn to judge quality by smell and appearance. Your muscles continue to loosen, your body finding that perfect position of complete relaxation. Let's talk about something that affects everyone in Tudor England, but that we haven't explored in detail yet: the weather. Weather in Tudor England is unpredictable and often harsh. Winters can be brutally cold, with temperatures that freeze rivers solid. Summers can be either blazingly hot or disappointingly cool and wet. And weather affects everything. A late spring means delayed planting, which means smaller harvests, which means higher food prices and potential famine. Too much rain during harvest time can ruin crops in the fields. A harsh winter can kill livestock and make travel impossible. You learn to read weather signs obsessively, the colour of the sky at sunset, the behaviour of animals, the feel of the wind. Your survival might depend on accurately predicting when a storm is coming or when winter is about to break. You also learn to prepare for weather extremes. Stocking extra food before winter, gathering fuel for heating, repairing buildings before storm season, making sure you have warm clothing and waterproof gear. And you learn to endure weather that would seem unbearable by modern standards, working in fields during summer heat that makes you dizzy, hauling water when your hands are so cold you can barely grip the bucket, walking miles in rain that soaks through every layer of clothing. But there are also moments of pure pleasure connected to weather. The first warm day of spring when you can finally work outside without shivering. A gentle summer evening when the air smells of hay and flowers. The satisfaction of being warm and dry inside when a storm is raging outside. Actually, let's pause on that last one for a moment, because the contrast between being outside in harsh weather and being inside where it's warm and dry is something Tudors appreciate in a way we might not fully understand. When you come inside after hours of working in cold rain, the warmth of the fire feels miraculous. When you sit down to a bowl of hot pottage after a long cold day, it tastes like the most delicious food in the world. These simple pleasures, warmth, dryness, hot food, a place to rest, become sources of genuine joy. Not just relief, but actual happiness, getting even more comfortable now. Your breathing naturally matching the gentle rhythm of the story. Speaking of simple pleasures, let's talk about the social aspects of Tudor life that make survival not just possible, but meaningful. Community in Tudor England is tight-knit by necessity. You depend on your neighbours for help during emergencies. They depend on you. This creates bonds that go beyond mere friendship. When someone in the community gets sick, others help with their work. When someone's house burns down, neighbours contribute materials and labour to rebuild it. When someone dies, the community supports the surviving family members. This isn't just charity, it's mutual insurance. You help others because you know that someday you'll need their help, and this system works because everyone understands their role and responsibilities. There are also informal networks of information and support. Women gathering to do laundry together, sharing news and gossip, men working together in the fields, discussing crops and weather and local politics, children playing together, forming friendships that will last throughout their lives. These social connections make the hardships of Tudor life more bearable. When you're exhausted from work, you have friends to talk to. When you're worried about the future, you have people who understand your concerns. When you achieve something good, you have a community to celebrate with. And celebration is important in Tudor culture, not just the big feast days, but smaller celebrations too. The completion of a difficult project, a successful harvest, a wedding or birth, any excuse to gather together, share food and drink, tell stories, sing songs. Music is everywhere in Tudor life. Work songs to make labour more bearable, drinking songs for taverns and celebrations, religious songs for church services, love songs for courting and marriage. Even servants often know dozens of songs. Some are traditional ballads that tell stories of heroes and adventures. Others are newer compositions about current events or local personalities. Singing while you work isn't just entertainment. It's a way of building team spirit and maintaining morale. A group of people working together and singing together develops a rhythm and coordination that makes the work more efficient. You feel your body completely relaxed now, sinking into the medieval bedding as if you truly belong in this time and place. And speaking of belonging, let's talk about how people in Tudor England think about their place in the world. Social hierarchy is rigid, but it's also clearly defined. Everyone knows their status and what's expected of them. Servants know they're supposed to obey their masters. Masters know they're supposed to provide for their servants. Lords know they're supposed to protect their tenants. Tenants know they're supposed to support their lords. This might seem restrictive by modern standards, but it also provides security and stability. You know where you stand, you know what your rights and responsibilities are, you know who you can turn to for help and who you're obligated to help in return. Social mobility is limited but not impossible. A skilled craftsman can become prosperous and respected. A clever servant can earn the trust and favour of wealthy employers. A successful merchant can buy land and eventually achieve gentry status. But most people don't expect dramatic changes in their social status. They focus on doing their current job well, building good relationships within their community, and providing for their families. This creates a different kind of ambition than we might recognize today. Instead of trying to climb the social ladder, people focus on becoming the best version of themselves within their current circumstances. A blacksmith takes pride in his craftsmanship, in creating tools and weapons that are both beautiful and functional. A cook takes pride in managing a household kitchen efficiently, in creating satisfying meals from simple ingredients. A farmer takes pride in understanding his land, in coaxing good harvests from difficult soil. This focus on excellence within your assigned role creates deep satisfaction and meaning. You're not just working to survive, you're contributing to your community, using your skills to help others, participating in something larger than yourself. Your breathing has become completely natural and peaceful, your body utterly comfortable despite the rough textures of the Tudor bedding. As the day progresses and the light outside your small window grows brighter, you're beginning to understand that Tudor England, for all its harshness and uncertainty, is also a place where people find genuine happiness and meaning. They build lasting relationships. They develop skills and take pride in their work. They create art and music and literature. They raise children and pass on their knowledge and values. They celebrate life's good moments and support each other through difficult times. They find ways to laugh and love and hope, even when circumstances are challenging. And they do all of this while dealing with dangers and hardships that would seem overwhelming by modern standards. They face the constant possibility of disease, famine, war, and political persecution. They work harder and longer than most people do today. They live with uncertainty and insecurity that we can barely imagine. Yet they persist. They thrive. They create communities and cultures that will influence the world for centuries to come. Right now, lying in your comfortable modern bed, feeling the softness of real mattresses and clean sheets, you can appreciate both how much easier your life is and how much you share with these people from 500 years ago. The same basic human needs for safety, comfort, connection, and meaning, the same capacity for resilience and adaptation, the same ability to find joy and beauty even in difficult circumstances. Nice and easy, that's it, as you sink deeper into the warmth and comfort of your modern bedding, so much softer than those straw-filled sacks, while the Tudor world continues around you and your muscles relax completely as you settle into this perfect position, and somewhere in the distance another church bell chimes across the English countryside, marking the steady passage of time in this fascinating and dangerous era. The church bells grow softer now, more distant, as if the Tudor world is gently fading around the edges. You've been lying here for what feels like hours, your body completely adapted to the rough textures of medieval life, your breathing slow and natural, your mind drifting peacefully through this strange and fascinating time. As the afternoon light filters through your small window, you realise that you've learned something important about Tudor England, something that goes beyond the executions and persecutions, beyond the harsh working conditions and primitive medicine. You've learned that people then, just like people now, found ways to make meaning from their lives. They created beauty in small things. They built relationships that sustained them through hardship. They developed wisdom about what truly matters. Take the way they think about time, for instance. Without clocks in every room, without schedules dominating every moment, Tudors live by natural rhythms. The sun, the seasons, the bells marking prayers and meals and rest. This creates a different relationship with time. Less frantic, more accepting of natural cycles. Work when there's work to be done. Rest when the body needs rest. Celebrate when there's reason to celebrate. Your eyelids are starting to feel pleasantly heavy as you imagine this gentler way of being in the world. You're beginning to understand that despite all the dangers we've discussed, despite all the hardships, Tudor England is also a place of profound human connections. People who depend on each other for survival develop bonds that go deeper than casual friendship. The servant who shares her meagre portion of food with a sick colleague, the craftsman who teaches his skills to a young apprentice, knowing that knowledge is the greatest gift he can give, the neighbour who sits through the night with a dying friend, offering comfort in the final hours. These acts of kindness and connection happen constantly in Tudor England, not because life is easy, but because life is hard. When survival is uncertain, when death is always present, people learn to appreciate each other in ways that we might have forgotten. And there's wisdom in this, a kind of practical spirituality that emerges from living close to the edge. When you can't take tomorrow for granted, you pay attention to today. When you can't control much of what happens to you, you focus on how you respond. Tudors develop a deep appreciation for simple pleasures. The warmth of a fire after a cold day, the taste of fresh bread when you're truly hungry, the sound of laughter after a period of worry, the feeling of clean clothes against your skin. These aren't just minor comforts, they're sources of genuine joy, because when your baseline is discomfort and uncertainty, relief feels miraculous. Your breathing grows deeper and more relaxed as you sink further into the straw mattress, your body completely at peace. As evening approaches in the Tudor world around you, you can hear the household settling into its nighttime routines. Somewhere nearby, someone is banking the fires, covering coals with ash to preserve them through the night. You can hear the soft murmur of prayers being said, people asking for protection through the dark hours. There's something deeply comforting about these evening rituals, the way everyone participates in preparing for rest, the way the household becomes quieter, more peaceful as daylight fades. You remember what we learned about Tudor sleep, how they believed in 2 sleeps with a quiet time in the middle of the night for reading, praying, or intimate conversation, how they took precautions against evil spirits, turning shoes upside down and hanging herbs from the rafters. But mostly, you remember how they approached sleep as a time of healing and restoration, when the natural and supernatural worlds came together, when the body could repair itself and the soul could find peace. And lying here now in your own comfortable bed, you can feel that same sense of restoration beginning. Your muscles completely relaxed, your breathing slow and steady, your mind drifting peacefully through memories of this strange and wonderful time. The Tudor world is fading now, becoming softer and more dreamlike. The harsh edges of survival blur into something gentler. The sounds of the household grow distant and muffled. You can still hear those church bells, but they're calling from very far away now, across centuries, across the vast distance between their world and yours. A gentle reminder of all the people who have lived and struggled and found joy before you. Your eyelids are growing heavier now, naturally wanting to close as the story draws toward its peaceful conclusion. Think about what you've learned tonight, about resilience, about community, about finding meaning and beauty even in difficult circumstances, about the deep human capacity to adapt and endure and create something worthwhile from whatever life offers. The people of Tudor England faced challenges that would seem overwhelming to us, yet they persisted. They built families and communities, they created art and music and literature that still moves us today. They developed ways of thinking and being that have shaped our world. And they did all of this while living with uncertainty and hardship that we can barely imagine. They found ways to be happy, to love deeply, to take pride in their work, to support each other through everything life threw at them. There's something profoundly inspiring about this. Something that speaks to the best parts of human nature, the parts that don't give up, the parts that find light in darkness and hope in despair. As you lie here in your comfortable modern bed, feeling the softness of real mattresses and clean sheets, you can carry this inspiration with you, this reminder of human strength and wisdom and creativity. Your breathing is becoming deeper now, more rhythmic as your body naturally prepares for sleep. The Tudor world is dissolving around you like morning mist. The rough textures of straw and wool fade into the gentle embrace of your modern bedding. The sounds of medieval life give way to the quiet peace of your own room. But the lessons remain. The understanding that people throughout history have faced their challenges with courage and grace, that communities support each other through difficult times, that simple pleasures can be sources of profound joy. That survival isn't just about staying alive, it's about staying human, about maintaining connections and creating meaning and finding reasons to hope. Your eyelids are growing very heavy now, wanting to close. As a deep sense of peace settles over you, you can feel yourself drifting away from Tudor England now, floating gently back toward your own time, your own life, your own comfortable bed. The centuries between then and now stretch out like a soft bridge, carrying you safely home. And as you drift, you carry with you a new appreciation for the simple things, the safety and comfort that you might usually take for granted, the freedoms and opportunities that previous generations could only dream of, but also the timeless things, the importance of community and connection, the value of meaningful work, the deep satisfaction that comes from persevering through challenges. Your breathing is so slow and peaceful now, each breath carrying you deeper into relaxation. The straw mattress beneath you transforms gradually into your own soft bed. The rough woolen blanket becomes your own warm covers. The small Tudor window opens into the safety and comfort of your own room. Your home now, safe and warm and completely relaxed. The Tudor world was real, and the lessons you've learned there are real, but now you can simply rest. Let your eyelids close completely now. Let your breathing become even slower and deeper. Let your body sink completely into the softness and warmth of your bed. There's nothing you need to do now except rest. Nothing you need to think about except how comfortable and peaceful you feel. Nothing you need to worry about except allowing yourself to drift gently into sleep. Your muscles are completely relaxed now. Your mind is quiet and peaceful. Your breathing is slow and steady and natural. And as you drift deeper into this perfect state of relaxation, you can feel grateful. Grateful for the comfort and safety of your modern life. Grateful for the courage and wisdom of the people who came before you. Grateful for this moment of peace and rest. The church bells are silent now. The Tudor world has faded into history. There's only this moment of perfect comfort, perfect peace, perfect relaxation. Your eyelids are so heavy they simply can't stay open anymore. Your breathing is becoming deeper and more distant. Your body is sinking into the most comfortable position imaginable. And now, as you drift deeper and deeper into peaceful sleep, you can let go completely. Let go of the day's concerns, let go of tomorrow's responsibilities, let go of everything except this feeling of perfect comfort and peace. Your breathing grows slower and deeper with each moment. Your body becomes heavier and more relaxed. Your mind grows quieter and more peaceful, drifting now, floating gently on waves of comfort and warmth, sinking deeper into the soft embrace of sleep, deeper and deeper, more and more relaxed, more and more peaceful, until there's nothing left except the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the soft warmth of your bed, the deep, peaceful sleep that carries you safely through the night. Sleep now. Deep, peaceful, restorative sleep. Nothing to do except rest. Nothing to think about except how comfortable you feel. Just sleep. Deep, beautiful sleep. Deeper and deeper into the most peaceful sleep imaginable. Sleep.